Good morning, everyone. We are here at the final wave. We are bringing you the best in post-apocalypse tunes and conversation. I am your host, Tom Fire. Other stations may have backed out or perished into terrible oblivion, but we are here, always providing you with company that won't try to eat your face.
The animated radio host voice rang out, the only one still standing, other than a few emergency broadcasts that would repeat until their source of power died. At 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, every single day, his voice would consistently ring out through the wastelands. 4 hours, filling the empty streets and homes, long abandoned by the people of the world. Anywhere that still had power would be able to listen in. Skeletons of former living beings decorated most of the homes. Humans, pets, livestock, and nearly all the world gradually died. Some areas had been reclaimed by nature, animals able to reforge their paths, and soon the urban landscape became blended in with nature. Eventually, nothing of the human world would remain. The remnants of raider camps lingered empty. Once busy places riddled with danger were no more. All the carnage was far away from the radio presenter's home, safe in the mountains. They were on top of an old watchtower, looking over a wild forest with some rare pockets of life, both plant and animal. Distant from nearly everyone, it kept them safe and secure.
I have something that I want to talk about today. I know that it isn't likely that there's anyone left.
The voice that projected out every day was slowly becoming increasingly drained, yet willing to continue until the very end, sending out messages into the empty wastes, and recording the loss of humanity's history.
I've been thinking about how the world ended, before all the other stations went dark, unlike the final wave.
He added, gulped loudly, and let out a loud gasping sigh, and continued with sincerity.
There are so many theories about what happened, when it started, and who was the one who caused it all. But what we do know is, the power grid went out worldwide for 3 days. Now, not a lot of people include this in their theories, and
Tom paused, stunned, as though he saw something out of the corner of his eye.
Uh-oh. The first wave of illnesses ran through the population. They couldn't tell what it was. It was completely alien. Mallory...
Tom nearly addressed someone familiar, dear to his heart. Someone the listeners heard many times previously, before one day, her voice no longer echoed across the waves with his.
It doesn't just affect people. Animals, even some types of fungi, struggled to deal with it. It caught humanity completely off guard, even compared to all other crises society had been going through the decade leading up to it. Rapid technological advance, struggling economy, fewer resources.
He struggled to keep events in chronological order, trying to remember and process it all.
Let's see. I guess I should explain to the new bloods. Wait. I should explain every term that I used yesterday, and I suppose what I will be using. New bloods are people born in the chaos, and they just don't remember what life was like before. When I heard one on the radio, years ago now, they didn't believe their dad when they told them about all the things humanity had.
Tom smiled, happy at the memory.
Then, there are the feral children. Those born after everything really broke down.
He shuddered at the mention of the feral children. The memories of human de-evolution lingered in his mind, and the recorded reports of what they had turned into.
Humans have always done what they have to in order to survive. Murder, theft. But these ferals travel in packs and attack blindly. A couple of years ago, I heard about people trying to rehab them. Take them in, feed them, teach them to speak, and...
He winced at the memory. His hand flicked through the well-worn pages, concerning their dealings with those who found them. One page had notes while the opposite side had drawings that continued for pages afterward. An orphanage had been plundered. Those who wanted to help the children, slowly tortured and torn apart, their bodies strung up on the church, their innards hanging out of their corpses, and twisty, rusty nails driven into their bones to hold them upright. The fortunate ones died before this occurred, while the unlucky ones were feasted on while they were still alive.
Try to make them human again.
What did it even mean to be human anymore? Did anyone know? Was there even something that resembled humanity?
Ultimately, they ended up killing them. I don't know what happened to them after that. People would mention them occasionally on the radio, and then silence.
He went back to his catchy radio-esque voice.
So, if you're out there, keep an eye out for them. By all accounts, they're still out there, so watch your back for the tiny terrors.
The acid rain started again. He put on his worn, patched-up jacket, lifted up his hoodie to protect himself in case a stray droplet would slip through the metal sheet roof. It had been patched up many times, both by Tom and the previous residents who stayed here. When the weather cleared up, he would need to inspect the damage before trying to find any supplies.
No, I got ahead of myself. That was all much later. Okay, back to what I was talking about.
He paused, trying to put his thoughts back in order.
Oh, yeah. The illnesses started the chaos because it impacted crops and livestock. There were economic crashes, and countries were unwilling to share their aid with each other.
He stopped to look over at an empty chair that rested close to his, as though waiting for something to happen. Once it didn't, Tom continued with his explanation.
There were wars over resources, not unlike the past, but this time for food, fertile land, water, space without the illnesses. It ended up spreading it more.
He took a mouthful of clean rainwater out of a well-beaten metal cup. When he first got it, it was shiny and bright, no more.
From what I can remember, France, Spain, and somewhere else all fell into complete anarchy. World leaders apparently abandoned everyone and spent their time either on naval vessels or in underground bunkers. There were rumors that they engineered this as part of a cleanse to bring the population to a manageable level. I think if that was their intention, it worked too well. You know, with the likely extinction of humanity.
He debated mentioning the more outlandish claims, the possibilities that people would talk about when they were sure other people weren't listening. His words offered comfort to himself. However, this time, there was a living listener. A gloved hand reached to turn the dial, increasing the volume of the broadcast, and remembering his voice, familiar, constant, and made them think of the few safe homes they had. Their outer clothing concealed them completely, coated in ash and dark snow, hidden away from the extreme weather. The individual was inside an abandoned motor store, connected to a gas station. The road now barely visible under layers of ash and snow. There was no sign, having fallen off long ago, and any cracks in the walls brought in vines or other plants. The person listened while going back to scavenging items from one of the lockers. Only the scrap in the roughest condition was left.
For the sake of record keeping, I guess I could tell you about the weirder claims. Some people suggested aliens and their involvement on the planet, and that it was sent by an asteroid, while others say it was created in a lab to cure one ailment, only to release something much worse.
Now he thought about it more. The possibilities made sense. With a lead pencil, he grumbled to himself while he sketched every possibility. In thick black lettering, he wrote, "Possibilities," on the first page. The old school book still had many pages left to be filled.
Those theories aside, many countries broke down and no longer exist today. Canada doesn't exist. I heard their prime minister and all the officials were executed by an angry mob. I can understand people's rage. So many things could have been done. Unfortunately, this only made things so much worse. And then, the warlords started.
The radio host took a loud gulp of his drink, reflected some more, and let out a long sigh. Tom couldn't remember exactly which countries managed to last the longest, nor the names of the smaller countries that rose and nearly instantly fell.
I made a record of everything I could remember. Any rumor or possibility of what happened before and after. I wrote it all down, even did some carvings on pieces of stone and wood in hopes that something would survive.
He scoffed at this, flipping through one of the many handwritten books with writing and drawings of variable quality. One showed two people aiming guns at each other. Another had hordes of starving people walking through the streets of a once prosperous city, with the ruins of buildings on either side. A pile of skulls with a teenager looking up at the mountainous peak.
But I don't think there will be many people around. Survivors, I mean.
His mid-sentence pause lingered, a sob in the back of his throat.
You're doing a great job.
He imagined her hands on his shoulders, standing behind him and stroking his hair. Even her ghostly hands were warm, soothing. He knew she wasn't there. She died years ago to the flu, when they rescued a drifter who too perished, leaving him here by himself. If only they had kept him away, threatened him with death or forced him to leave, she would still be alive. He closed his eyes, and soon she disappeared. The loss he could never recover from. Her words gave him confidence to continue.
I hope there are other people. If you're still here, please stay safe, and you may be the future of the human race. I would love to see you, and speak to you, but
He paused to consider his words.
I don't know if you will even understand me. Not everyone speaks English. I remember I managed to get in touch with someone. Neither of us could understand what the other was saying, but
He smiled, and you could hear it in his voice. It wouldn't matter much, considering the radio waves no longer traveled as far as they used to.
I don't think he found someone. I think he was German, or maybe Dutch. Eventually, his signal became blurry before it finally faded out.
I remember him. I think the two of you could have been friends.
Mallory's voice was soft, gentle. Tom turned to look at her side of the desk. He kept everything she had there. A necklace her aunt gave her. A random toy they found when they were scavenging for supplies. And perhaps his favorite, a ring that hung from a necklace. One of the few that hadn't been looted after the world collapsed. Tom's hand reached out and took the ring in his hand.
I wish you weren't here alone. It would be good for you to have a friend.
He knew she wasn't there. Maybe it was his subconscious trying to keep him connected to the world. Either way, every day, he knew he needed to hear her, and she always appeared at least once. There had been too much dead air. No one wanted dead air, especially when there was no more music to be played. Tom cleared his throat, forced a smile.
Sorry about that, folks. I missed where I was, again.
He sighed, doubting anyone was listening. Why not speak on matters that were personal? Even among the loss of the world, there were numerous tragedies that haunted individuals before they passed. The individual from the motor store stayed there, setting up a temporary camp, and took out a portable radio to tinker with. The surface was scratched. There were scrap marks, but it tried to pick up the frequency. It didn't work, but the concealed person kept working to find a solution.
I'm sure you all remember Mighty Mallory, my co-host with the most.
He smiled, remembering how the pair would share the microphone and send their message out, well, for all time's sake.
Hello, listeners. It is your co-host with the most. I am Tom Fire.
And I'm Mighty Mallory.
And we're the final wave. Other stations may have backed out, or perished into terrible oblivion, but here we are, always providing you with company that won't try to eat your face.
The animatic and bright radio host voice was gone. His tone went back to a serious one.
It was a few years ago now. It's hard to keep track of time, and we've never publicly spoken about our story. While I enjoy sharing other people's stories and that of the world, I think it's only fair for us to share ours. Considering everything, I'd say we were pretty fortunate.
A tear ran down his cheek, a surprisingly happy one, and he looked to her empty wooden chair. She had a pillow decorated with teddy bears holding different kinds of cakes. It seemed so out of place in the apocalypse, and she never gave in to the negativity or the cruelty of it all.
You don't have to do this if it upsets you. You know I'm here, and that's what matters.
She was seated there now, her elbows on the table, as she looked at him with those hazel eyes.
I mentioned the illnesses that went around, and we were both unaffected, completely healthy. Our families and friends weren't so lucky, and we ended up burying them.
Some he clearly remembered well, and others had faded off to become a distant memory.
Together, we decided to travel down the coast rather than inland. At one point, we talked about getting a boat and traveling the oceans, finding an island that wasn't impacted by the virus, and spending our time enjoying ourselves. It was the first time we saw two different raider groups attack each other. They were trying to get a hold over the docks.
He remembered, if it was a movie of some kind, they'd each be given different colors, or uniforms, or backstories about who they were. In reality, both sides looked so similar that even they had trouble telling each other apart.
Oh, I remember them. We hid in a drainage ditch and watched them leave. I'm pretty sure I begged you to kill me before they got us.
The pair chuckled with dark gallows humor.
We kept walking along the shore and found a beached vessel. I remember the stench. I had to keep pointing my gun inside in case it was a trap, and Mallory opened the door. There were piles of bodies of people. I couldn't tell where they were originally from. They looked like skeletons. You wouldn't believe the smell. The only survivor was a small boy, malnourished, and he couldn't speak. He was past the point of survival. Not without a hospital, and well, there was no chance of that happening.
His voice drifted off, sad and numb, clearly hating the situation.
That poor boy. You were kind to him, though. We looked after him until he died.
I hate saying this, but while we didn't kill him,
We looked after him.
She interjected.
we stepped over his body and looted what supplies they had. I remember pulling a handgun off one of the corpses, still with bullets, and I wondered why they hadn't used it on themselves.
They had hope.
The voice echoed through the surviving radios across the wastelands. A mixed tale of morality given the changing circumstances. The boat in question was long looted multiple times, having many owners, and finally lay at the ocean floor. A rusting memory, and now a home for the surviving crustacean life forms. Still, the lone figure kept trying to fix the portable radio, guided by the familiar sounds, trying to get a consistent signal so they would leave and still listen, hopeful of a chance to meet with other people.
I kept it. I think it is in my bag somewhere, just in case.
He knew exactly where it was. While they were welcoming, a safe place to live was a treasure, and something worth protecting. His foot rested on the bag filled with a variety of weapons. Knives, guns, even an old sword that could be utilized if the need arose. His favorite gun sat fully loaded, safety off, and ready to fire. It sat ready on the desk in case someone decided to climb the stairs. So far, no one did. There were his pencils, sharpeners, and various notepads that kept a record of the events. In the corner were the sleeping bags, a small stove to cook and boil water, and a bug-out bag in case he needed to flee. Not that he wanted to. This was home now. The only other thing that resided on the desk was a microphone that shared the stories of the wasteland.
Morality was blurred. I remember we nearly joined one of the communities that were starting up. They wanted to build a safe town where the old ethics of the world came back.
Tom smiled, the memory bittersweet, and he tapped his fingers on the surface of the table and stopped when he realized what he was doing.
I wish that place worked out. There were about 4, I remember. One sounded like it was right out of The Walking Dead.
Her image smiled, remembering one of the many television shows they would watch together. The real apocalypse and post-apocalypse weren't as entertaining.
Most were overrun, or so I heard. I remember hearing about one group ending up trying to move back up north to try and find safety. This was long before we found the radio station, so we don't know what happened to them. No, Stevie and Rachel, if you can hear me, I hope you guys made it.
It was unlikely that they did. Most didn't survive. Not that he wanted to think about it. Again, there was more dead air, as he was caught up in his thoughts and memories, unable to shake them.
They were a really nice couple. Steve and Roger were also great too. I wish there had been a way for us to keep in touch.
I wish that some of those places worked out.
He sighed, remembering some of the communities that did thrive. For a time.
There were raider groups ruled by warlords that never lasted long. They were good at killing, plundering, and destroying lives, but providing housing, medicine, and food?
Tom snored with distaste, recalling the rare times they had come across them, and somehow they managed to avoid being enslaved, branded, and kept as livestock.
I wonder sometimes if this is what happened in ancient times. I know it's a conspiracy theory, but I wonder how many smaller apocalypses humanity has had that we just didn't know about. I remember watching... Christ, what was it called?
He drummed his palms on the surface of the desk, trying to think of what program he had been obsessed with.
It was about how there were advanced civilizations, and then for whatever reason, humanity was pushed back into the Dark Ages.
Ancient aliens?
Yes, Ancient Aliens. That's the one.
He stopped, realizing he'd outright spoken with Mallory. Who was even around to judge him?
I hated that show so much.
She laughed with good humor. Tom could nearly forget she was dead, especially with how they would still joke. It all felt the same.
I don't think humanity will be coming back from this one, though.
More dead air. The rain continued longer than expected, pouring down, and he looked out the window into the dark. The sight of trees swaying, and the clouds continuing their onslaught on the plant matter underneath. Hopefully, any of the surviving animals had found a place to shelter in it all.
One group, well, there were multiple ones, I have proof of this one, were the groups based around religion. That this whole event was caused by God or the Antichrist, or whatever variation of it.
He flicked through the book, grumbling to himself about how he should have marked things better, and finally found the correct pages. Sprawled across them were drawings of a variety of religious symbols, old and new, along with worshippers around a person, or some kind of idol, praying or slaving away to build something out of scrap metal or old cars.
I remember a broadcast asking people to go to San Francisco, telling them that the city was being purged of all sin, and if you wished to be forgiven, you would travel down there, join in, and be free. I think some innocent people would get caught up with groups rather than do things on their own. The whole safety in group mentality.
Tom wrinkled his nose in complete disgust.
You only ever killed because you had to. I can't remember you ever wanting someone dead.
He gave her a skeptical look followed by an apologetic one.
There are plenty of people I wanted dead.
He never forgot each life he was forced to take, in order to protect them both. The first one was a burglar who came to their house when the world was gradually falling apart with a long knife, demanding their supplies or he would kill them. Tom tried to warn him, once, twice, more until he threatened Mallory, and Tom shot him in the chest, killing him nearly instantly. They knew things were bad when the police didn't bother to arrest the intruder, nor did they take him to jail. Tom knew things were definitely breaking down.
I think it is a universal thing in our world now. Everyone has killed to protect what they have, or
He struggled to hide his disgust.
take what they needed to in order to make it through.
More dead air. Tom sat wondering what the Tom of the past would have thought of him. Would he have been able to recognize himself?
There were so many groups that claimed to be the Messiah, the Promised Land. It wasn't solely an American phenomena either. I remember reports from the UK, and even far away in Australia too.
He paused, thinking to himself.
I can't remember how all of these groups fell apart. Infighting, inbreeding, the people turning on their prophets.
He kept listing the various possibilities off on his fingertips. The truth was, no one except those involved would know for sure.
Food shortages, disease, another group coming in and wiping them out. Not everyone will believe their lies, even if someone's community would.
Some of those groups needed to be destroyed. I wish the innocent people wouldn't get caught up in it all.
Other than children, and I mean incredibly young children, no one is innocent or guiltless in this world.
The rain was slowing down now, still too dangerous and too wet to do any work on it. He lowered the setting on their gaslight and pulled down the heavy blanket that served as a curtain to keep out the light. In a dark world, any light attracted those who wished to feast, and he had no desire to turn the tower into a beacon. It was barely creeping up at midday, but the sky was dark like nighttime. Ever since the last man who had brought a disease with him ended up killing Mallory, he hadn't seen a single living soul. Not even the corpses were fresh anymore.
Sometimes, late at night, I sit and think about what I had to do to survive. Mal and I, during the first Great Famine, had made a pact with each other. If one of us died first, the other would cut up, store the meat, and eat it so the other would have a chance of surviving.
Please don't remind me. I hated that pact.
I know you did.
And we made it out.
She leaned forward, only Tom able to hear her.
And we didn't need to eat each other.
I remember there were times when we would find our way to trade in communities. We'd buy or trade whatever they needed for some minced meat, and it has always been in the back of my mind that I ate human meat that day.
He felt an uneasy, sickly feeling in his stomach at the possibility, and knew there were other circumstances he hadn't told Mallory about. All that mattered was keeping them both fed and healthy, even if he failed on the latter.
What? No.
It tasted like pork, didn't it?
Yes?
And how many pigs did you see or smell?
The question left an uncomfortable silence in the air. He wished he could have discussed all of this with Mallory, on the air while she was still alive. She often acted as his conscience while he was alive and in death. Mallory personified it. She didn't answer him. Her gaze lingered on him, and slowly, she disappeared to wherever she went again. He gave her direction a longing look, yet knew she would return, as she always did.
I didn't see or smell any. There were plenty of people, though. Far too many for a settlement like that to manage. It was the reason why Mal and I had to make our escape. I can't remember the name of the town anymore.
He quickly flicked through the pages, trying to find something to kickstart his memory, and reached over to pick up another book.
Ah, damn it. I'll let you know when I find it. I don't think it lasted long.
He tapped his fingertips, trying to think of the next topic of conversation, and wished there was a way for survivors to contact him. Imagine interviewing someone while they were trying to survive. What skills they learned, what advice they had, and just the feeling of not being alone.
I've debated doing this for a while.
He began. Once this information was out, there was no way to get it back.
I've been tempted to share my coordinates with my amazing listeners. And if you are interested, you can come out this way and live with me in a little community.
He looked over to see if Mallory had returned. Her chair was still empty.
I know I was just talking about cannibalism. I promise, on my word, I won't try to eat someone who comes out here to visit me. So long as you don't do the same. Deal?
Tom offered, waiting as though someone was listening in and agreeing. If he heard it, he would definitely be wary, and sure whoever said it would certainly try and eat him. He let out a long, soft groan.
I hate the fact that I might be the last human left. The loneliness of being the last is unbearable. Before the world fell, I didn't have a lot of friends, and I preferred to stick to myself, Mal, and maybe a couple of others. If this ends with me, what can I say that humanity has done for the planet, or even ourselves? In barely the blink of an eye, humanity has destroyed itself and everything around us, and...
He paused, stood up, and his chair loudly moved across the floor. Tom opened up a drawer, the remnants of the items they found when they came to the tower, and it became their home. He pulled out an aged bottle of whiskey. He rubbed the label, and could barely manage to make out the lettering.
You know, it's time for something a little stronger than water.
Tom gulped up the rest of the day's rations. Even alone, he kept things orderly. With his lips still wet, he opened the bottle and poured it in, close to the brim. The aroma of alcohol was strong and caused him to exhale.
I promised to only open this when I came across another person, but since that's looking unlikely, I'll do it.
He took a mouthful and winced at the flavor, before swallowing it down.
I wonder what will come next. See, first it was the ocean life, then the dinosaurs, and then the massive mammals, followed by humans.
He reflected, leaned back in his chair and imagined.
What species will rise to sentience, taking over the planet? And will they look at our ruins, wondering how we could have been so damn stupid? Or would they just forget it, not worrying or caring about us and our achievements?
Finally, there was a burst of static from the repair shop, and the figure let out a cry of happiness. The sound of the final wave came through. It was turned off to conserve the batteries, and they waited for the dark sky to clear up to make travel easier. Tom took a loud gulp, still not used to the taste.
Fuck it. The coordinates are 45.2156 degrees north, 88.4648 degrees west, if anyone would like to come visit.
I hope someone will, just so you won't be alone anymore.
She was back, this time seated on their sleeping bag, her arms hugging her legs, and a mug of tea beside her. Overall, a cozy image for the apocalypse. Tom didn't answer her. He knew Mallory wouldn't like it, but his mind was made up. If he was the last human, there was no more responsibility to anyone, and he could do what he wanted. He reached under the desk for a cocktail of tablets they found on their travels. Using the metal mug, he started to slowly crush them up.
The apocalypse has been an adventure, that's for sure.
He murmured, still working, until it was all a fine powder he brushed into his mug.
I hope someone will find us, and our place. There is still some food here. Not a lot, but some. We have seeds, water set up, everything someone would need to begin again. I'd rather have someone use it rather than leave it.
His eyelids felt heavy, his throat tight, and he lay down beside Mallory's ghost. She cupped his cheek, and they gazed at each other. The microphone cord dragged along the floor. He took it in his hand.
This is the final wave. I'm signing off for the last time. Our broadcasts will keep going.
He choked, feeling his heartbeat slow down, and then barely beat at all.
This message repeats.
The door was kicked open. A figure entered with a gun drawn. The figure aimed at all potential hiding spots in the room, one after another. Only when it was clear did the person have a proper look around to see the items. They had been spoken of so many times before. They looked to see a skeleton laying with their arm around empty space, with a ring inside a necklace in his rotted hand. Everything was exactly as described, and as promised. It had been so long that the vermin who feasted had long perished themselves. The hood was brushed back to reveal a young woman's heavily scarred face. She smiled softly at them. "Thank you for getting me through the apocalypse. Tom Fire, Mighty Mallory, and the final wave," she whispered, took the necklace and microphone to place back on the desk. Using the sleeping bag, she took Tom's corpse outside and gave it a burial as best she could before returning to her new home, unable to tell quite how long it had been. "I was a child when I first heard your voices." She kept everything in place, only adding her portable radio to the desk and tapping the microphone with a dirty fingernail. She cleared her throat a couple of times, building the courage to do what she dreamt of ever since she could remember. Hello? Hello. This is Wandering Kid letting you know that humanity still lives. She picked up the bottle of whiskey, took a mouthful, made a disgusted face, and put it straight back down again. In tribute to Tom Fire and Mighty Mallory, the final wave is officially back on the air with news of the wasteland. I'm pleased to tell you that all is not lost. There is a town called New Texas that has been settled for 5 years, and... She beamed, grinning happily. The disease has not gone down there as far. There are rumors that some people have developed a natural immunity, and there have also been reports of international survivors.
See? I told you.
Wandering Kid kept talking, updating the world of the events that happened, oblivious to them standing behind her, their ghostly forms semi-transparent.
Told me what?
You weren't going to be alone.
She got a chill down her spine and glanced back. Unable to see them, but deep down knew they were there. She smiled and went back to work. I hope you enjoy this story. What did you think of it? Let me know what you thought in the comments section down below. Don't forget to stab the like button, subscribe, hit the bell and leave a comment. This video is made with the support of my incredible channel members, Patreon subscribers, and all my viewers. Thank you so much for supporting me. Don't forget to check out my social media accounts below, including my merch. Stay safe, my little spooklings. And remember, I'll be watching you.